Hey, Sort of Past coming at you, Nubatama Third Eye Facebook page with, some Nubatama theory crafting, deck design, and such. So this is a deck I've actually been playing a bit, and instead of just showing you the deck profile, I'm going to talk through it with some options that one can think about. And a few little tweaks that I'm going to make on the fly while we're here. So let me make sure I've got everything the way I want in terms of showing you this. So it's Nubatama Premium, and recommend playing with one of the V-Era starters just because it's so good. On right, draw a card, and if you went second, you're gonna get your quick shield, and you're playing Nubatama, you're gonna want a Nubatama quick shield. So protect one, pretty good. This deck's gonna want protect one, basically, because it's gonna give you more value, typically. So get those out of the way. This deck, by the way, does run my favorite starter, which doesn't happen to be that, but we'll get to that. This is a Giacomesa deck. This is a deck, first and foremost, that doesn't care if it's damage denied. And it can act to damage deny a little bit on its own, if needed. So Giacomesa, the way Giacomesa works is when you attack, you flip up a card in your G zone, you pop 2 grade zeros, usually logs, but if you've got some triggers, you can put those out there and pop those as well. You bounce field to hand, you draw 2 cards, you put 2 cards down. You put down any number of cards that you want to, but you put 2 cards down because then this is going to get a crit and 10k. So this allows you to technically get up to 5 attacks, which is really good, and that's on our first stride. It's pretty unheard of in Nubatama. So very, very good stride. You're gonna want your stride fodders. I run this at 4. And so the main boss of the deck is Jamyocongo. Jamyocongo is quite unarguably the freest hand denial boss that we have. Giacomesa, absolutely limit break. You really don't have to do anything other than be at 4 damage to get him to work. I wanted that card in this deck, but it's too slow. You're trying to really hit your opponent really hard on first stride. Jamyocongo is going to set your opponent's hand to 6 right from the get-go. You're going to want to play with Katargitsune 2.0 because you're going to want to be able to go get Jamyocongo. This is your only ride target in the deck. This is going to help filter to go get this. This is very similar to if any of you out there also play V-Era Gears with Chrono Jet. I mean, this is going to have the same feel, and that is a deck that I've played. Really enjoy the deck, still have my V-Era deck built. And so the same principle goes here. Now, if you have your Jamyocongos in hand, there is another grade 3 that is from D-Era. So it is Tribash. So Tribash really does what it says. It bashes. So you attack with this. When your Vanguard attacks, you then put this into Soul. If your opponent has 2 or less cards in play, very important. Put this into Soul, and your Vanguard's going to get 1 critical until the end of that battle. So the important thing is that your opponent has 2 or less cards. So you might want to play with a little bit of board removal, such as maybe Tamahagane 1.0, things like that. I do like this card. It's really good against decks that are boardless state decks. Pale Moon, there's a number of decks that do that. They just kind of disappear. Even Nubatama, if you play Afterimage, can disappear. So as long as your opponent's board is not too full, Tribash definitely puts in the work. And I do recommend at least testing it. This is really honestly the best card that we have gotten so far for Nubatama Premium, other than the over trigger, which lets us restand. And we'll get to that. It's pretty cool. If over triggers are cool. So Tribash, Jamyocongo, everything is going to come to Jamyocongo, come down to Jamyocongo. So we're gonna keep that out here. I just want to kind of show the pieces here. This is to stride. This is to go get grade 3s. Tribash is our other grade 3. So yeah, and then Jamyocongo. The idea in the deck is to is for hand attrition of your opponent. So number of cards in here are GB1, and one of my buddies was saying, well, the guy I shout out to you, I play test with him most weekends, and he was saying, well, you might want to think about doing, Tempest Spheres, Zarzan, things like that, and it may come to that. I have played Jamyocongo vanilla, which if you go straight up vanilla with that, it's actually pretty okay, because you get to have a grade 3 in soul when you ride Jamyocongo, and so you get your opponent to 4. But this is a little different deck. I've got a profile out there that is very much the influencer of this deck, but this is tuned now that I've been playing it for a little bit. Enbai, the way Enbai works, GB1, Generation Break 1. Can't believe I actually remember that. When this unit is placed, if your opponent doesn't have a card in their bind zone, they bind one from hand. It's pretty good. If you're playing against a deck, maybe it's Bermuda, for example, that I play against quite a bit. This card's really kind of dead. Yeah, if your opponent has no cards in his or her bind zone, your opponent chooses one card from his or her bind zone, binds it, or from their hand, choose from the hand, bind it face down. Then at turn, your opponent puts that card into their hand. So most decks aren't going to have bind zones, so typically you'll be okay with that. That brings us to the next part of this power play team. My favorite starter in the game, Kamojigusa. Kamojigusa has after image. The way after image works is when your opponent brings back a card from their bind zone at the end of their turn, this pops back to your hand, which is really cool. Has 10k shield if you need it. You're going to be able to spam, use it again. The way she works is on placement, Generation Break 1. When she is placed, your opponent chooses a card from his or her bind zone, and it doesn't say face down, it just says a card, and puts it into his or her drop zone. If a card was put, you countercharge 1. So if you're playing against Bermuda Triangle, you actually can force them to have to empty their bind zone. But the way this works is typically your opponent puts a card from their hand to their bind zone. This card is going to allow you to generate more resources for yourself, countercharging while forcing your opponent to discard a card from their bind zone to the discard. And so, yeah, a pretty good team, pretty good power play. Definitely something that's going to help fuel. I'll put this here. This is actually really important in terms of combo in the deck. So there's that. The other thing, we need logs. We need logs because we have Giacomesa. We're definitely going to need logs. And so the reason I'm showcasing this one first is it's free in the sense of no counterblast. It's just soul blast 2, pop back to hand, generate 2 of these guys. So it's pretty good. So we'll put that over here. These are resource cards, really. Tribash, resource card. This is going to put pressure on. So these are definitely resources. Stride fodder, getting our grade 3. We're definitely going to need logs to help. Well, we're going to want them. We're going to want them to help this. This is our part of our hand control combo, if you will. And then Tribash is kind of off on its own right now. This gives us attack pressure in terms of giving us an extra crit. And then, of course, it's the king of the show. So other pieces, Fuki, if your opponent has 3 or more cards in their hand, this is not limit breaked or generation breaked at all. You put this into soul, counterblast 1, and your opponent randomly picks a card from their hand. Basically use dice typically. Get a 20-sided dice if your opponent has 10 plus cards. Or 11 plus, whatever. Get the right dice, some kind of randomization, and binds it face down, and again goes back to hand at the end of turn. So you can use Fuki together with Kamojigusa as well, just like Bakuren works as well. So these 2 cards can use Kamojigusa can be fueled by either one of these cards. So in theory, the way you'd want to use is this first, and then you can use Fuki, get 2 cards from their hand. If you're just sitting on this, your opponent's at 6, they're now at 5, they're now at 4. You can use this to then blow one of those cards away. Your opponent gets to pick, countercharge if you need to from the Fuki. And yeah, if you have 2 Fukis, you know how it is. You can. So more logs, more trees. New card from Clan Selection that definitely belongs in here. This is Yami Shibuki. Yami Shibuki. So Yami Shibuki, continuous rearguard circle. During your turn, this unit gets +5k for every grade 0 rearguard. So Kamojigusa is grade 0. The logs are grade 0, triggers are grade 0, so this can really get kind of big. And you definitely want a beater like this in your deck. I would say that's a general rule in any deck that you build. You want some supportive card that's going to be able to hit really hard. Sure, you have your Vanguard, you're striding, you're getting this up into 30Ks, but this definitely is off to the side, hitting along the wall, giving some big numbers. And so the way this card works on Vanguard Rearguard, when it attacks Counterblast 1, return one of your other units, your other rear guards to your hand, such as this. And it's going to be a rear guard, yeah. Call up to 2 tokens. So this is definitely going to help spam cards. It's going to be a cannon, if you will, to help put pressure. And it's going to generate tokens to help fuel Giacomesa. So some more resources. We want to draw cards. We need PGs. PGs are good. We're going to be, right along with more PGs, right? And yeah, and we're going to want to draw more cards too. So I currently have this in here. This is probably going to become the grade 3. What is it? Grade 3 heal. Yeah. So that's kind of where I'm going with that. This has become grade 3 heal. I'd go down on one of these. I do run 4 right now, 4-3. I'd probably go 4 of the heal, and then, well, actually I wouldn't have to do that, right? I just remove these. Well, no, you need, yeah. So it's interesting, right? It's going to be interesting. I guess we remove these. It's not that you have to have 16 grade 0s in your deck, it's that you have to have 16 triggers. So actually I'd be removing this until we get to that. I don't know what I was thinking here. I actually was thinking about the fronts to give +5, but that's D. That's a whole other thing. I'm really excited about DBTO2, working on Orphist. It'll be interesting to see what kind of piece I might be able to include in this deck. So far, Tribash and the Overtrigger. So this will be replaced with the grade 3s. Yeah. I think that's what we'll do. So just getting to our heal trigger, somewhat of a resource in terms of guarding, right? The Guardians I pick, I've got 1/Kime, which can help us get to GB whatever. I do use this from time to time, Counterblast, Soul Blast. Pick one of your opponent's grade 1s in the back row and dominate it and put it in the G zone. And this guy here is pretty free. If the number of cards in your opponent's hand is 3 or more, it gets +5. If it is 6 or more, it gets +10. So yeah, it can get kind of big. So I run a few of these, one of each of these, and then I run Dismal. Dizzy can help protect pieces that I might want to bounce with either Giacomesa or with Yami Shibuki. So I think I said that right. I'm not even gonna look at it. I think I said it right. So there's our Guardians. And so, yeah, getting to other oppressive pieces. Giacomesa, definitely. You hope that you can finish off your opponent with this. I do run a pair. You could go up to 3 if you want. Overtrigger. Our overtrigger basically says, and the way overtriggers work is when these check, either defensively, offensively, it gets banished, you draw a card. But offensively, what this does is allow you to restand your Vanguard. So imagine me on Giacomesa with a crit. You check this, it is going to restand. So, and if you've got Tribash and Soul, that's going to be 3 crit, 3 crit. It's pretty good. There's another card that's really good with this, and that would be a Toggle Lord. So the way a Toggle Lord works is if you're GB2, you on attack counterblast 1, and your opponent chooses one of their cards from hand and puts it in their bind zone. If they're now at 3 or less cards in hand, this gets a critical. Well, if you check this and you got a counterblast, you can do it again. So this has to persona flip. And so running 3 copies typically would not be that great. However, this is a reason for running 3 copies. In the end, we may want to run 4 copies, but I just wanted to show you that, hey, you could do something kind of funny if you want to. And honestly, if you want that 1 extra slot for something else, then so be it. You're going to have that 1 extra slot. So the 2 cards that really helped this deck out are Tribash. Tribash gets a crit. It also gets this up to its ultimate use, which is to have your opponent's hand at 4 or less, because you're going to slide this into soul at the end of your turn. This is now going to force your opponent to discard 2 more cards, depending on what they've guarded with. If they didn't guard, they're going to have to go down to 4. If they, you know what I mean. For the rest of the game, they're going to have to be at 4 or yeah. And then this allows us to do shenanigans like this. Autogolor gives us a +1 crit. Giacomesa gives us a +1 crit. We really like +1 crits. Another card that helps pressure, and this is one of the cards I've been a little bit on the fence with, because this only works if you have less cards than your opponent. So it's Generation Break 1 on attack, counterblast 1. You're going to give her +3k, and then if your opponent has, and it has to be boosted to do this. So you got to boost, right? Kamojigusa has to boost. Maybe it's Kirigiri that's boosting. Something has to boost. Maybe it's this. Something's got to boost. And so she'll get +3, taking her to 12, plus whatever the boost is. And if your opponent has more cards than you, you have less cards than your opponent, they randomly select a card from their hand and bind it. I'm just making sure it's random. Yes, it's at random. And that's why she's so good. She's random. She's like Fuki. Really messes up your opponent. They can't say, well, I want this PG. No, the PG's in the pot. The PG's in the pool. The PG may be going away so that you can then finish off your opponent. So I'm running her. She's a finisher combo piece. She's really where the game's just grind down, and you may have to really just empty your hand to make sure your hand's smaller than your opponent's to get this off. But she's really going to help push to get that extra guard out of your opponent's hand. And then maybe you're wanting to finish off with a Toggle Lord. You got a Tribash that's online. Maybe your opponent doesn't have, they only have 1 or 2 cards other than their Vanguard out in play. You're going to be able to Tribash to then a Toggle Lord to then swing for 3. Maybe you hit this, yay, do it again. You're now hitting for, yeah, it's just a lot of critical. But she helps finish with a Toggle Lord. This right here, Fuki with Miyabi with a Toggle Lord. This is a really old combo that we used to do, not just with the Toggle Lord, but Sukumorikan. And arguably, not arguably, I've mentioned before that I think this should have been Sukumorikan redone as a grade 3, and it's okay, it's okay. It basically is Sukumorikan. Sukumorikan is a stride that you counterblast to, your opponent has to set their hand to 4 cards, bind the rest. They're gonna get all those back at the end of the turn, but the point is, they go to 4, Fuki, they go to 3, when you attack, with her, they go to 2. If you had 2 Fukis on board, they went to 1. Your hand was empty so that you could do that, and then you work on finishing your opponent off. This deck, so that was 2016. If I'm not mistaken, Technical Booster 1, when I got my SP Toggle Lords and Miyabi, and again, Kamojigusa was just so awesome, and had Fuki and Sukumorikan. Now we have Sukumorikan as a grade 3. We've got Tribash from D to give us plus crits if we can. We've got the over trigger, which is really kind of busted, honestly. The best over triggers, in my opinion, are Brilliant Gate, Dragon Empire, and honestly, I really like the generic, the Cray. Those are my 3 favorites at this point in time. But then again, those are the ones that I would play with. So maybe a little biased there. So anyways, just to get back to it, Miyabi, you could change the 3. Maybe you want 3 Bobo. The deck very much does not rely on counterblasts other than a few pieces. The Toggle Lord needs counterblast, Fuki needs counterblast, this needs counterblast. But if you notice, a lot of these pieces do not, and Miyabi of course, but a lot of these pieces do not require counterblast. So a few other cards here. I do have Drachma. Drachma is definitely a finisher. Drachma's nuts. Drachma's really crazy with the cards that bind from hand as well, such as Miyabi and Fuki and Bakuren, because this is already causing your opponent to have to take 3 cards from hand, ride 1, discard 2, whatever's left in hand. You work at causing attrition. This is definitely a powerhouse in this deck. I would not be like, oh, I can replace this with anything. No, you really can't. You need to have Drachma. Drachma's been reprinted now, and how many forms we're getting it again, right? Something, I think, probably for the 5th time. So, a Toggle Lord, a finisher. Drachma, a finisher. Giacomesa, that's the start. That's the first stride that we've always wanted. It used to be Megan Tembu. That, 5 attacks, amazing. Superior hand attrition. Critical with some hand attrition as well. Awesome, awesome finisher. Would not replace it at all. I have Gilgal in here. Do I need Gilgal? Gilgal's situational. I've actually wanted this before. I've had games, and when I have a game or two where I'm like, I really want this, there's going to be other opportunities where it comes up. So this really is, I'd put this in the resource pot. The reason I put it in the resource pot, yeah, it's board wipe, but it helps make it so that I don't have to pay for stride. I still have to pay for ultimate stride by persona discarding. But this, I don't have to pay to stride any longer. So a few other cards. We're going to get to Shiranui here in a minute. Who said Shiranui could not be ran? A Shiranui stride cannot be ran with Jamyocongo. Bushi Road. Yeah, you know what I'm talking about, Rene. Yeah, I understand. I gotcha. I hear you. So I'm running Gone Rockin'. Now, Gone Rockin', this is from, gosh, what is this from? This is from Fighters Collection 3. They're now calling them premium collections. Could have just stuck with Fighters Collection, but that's okay. When this unit is placed on Vanguard, your opponent chooses 2 of his or her rearguards, binds all of his or her rearguards other than those 2. If 3 or more were bound, your opponent chooses 2 cards from his or her bind zone and puts them in the drop zone. And then, of course, you use Kamojigusa to bind that other card. Or 2, if you have 2 of these in your hand, you have 3, whatever. You notice your opponent selects 2 cards, right? Those 2 stay in play. Bermuda Triangle. Bermuda Triangle spams the board. Okay, cool. I can now use Tribash. Guaranteed. Because my opponent only has 2 cards in play. Tribash says 2 or less to go into Soul. Cool. Maybe that's my first stride. So this is a very interesting, a much old card along the likes of a Toggle Lord. Very, very old stride. And it has its place in here. It puts Tribash online. If your opponent's filled the board, I don't know, Aquaforce, Murakumo, a board is being filled up, you're going to be able to punk quite a few of those cards out of existence, and your opponent's only going to be left with 2 in play. You're going to be able to use Kamojigusa to knock out more of them. And so, yeah, this card really, honestly, if I wasn't running this deck, considering, yeah, let's just leave it at that. If I wasn't running this card in this deck, there would be a problem. So it is situational. This is if your opponent floods the field. You are going to want to run this card. So I would run it at 1. It's probably dirt cheap. It's literally probably like a 10-cent card. Yeah, so it has no cost to it other than stride. That's it. That's amazing. Again, more cards that don't require any counterblast. So talking about not needing counterblast, let's talk about Makuro. So Makuro is a very interesting part of the anime where Shiranui basically gains the ability to dominate the opponent's Vanguard and attack all the rearguards. Can't guard. For the longest time, that's been the rule. Can't guard. I know there's an argument right now that you no longer have to check the Vanguard value, but there's no Vanguard, there's no guarding to happen. So, yeah. Act once per turn. Generation Break 2. So last 2, discard a card, dominate your opponent's Vanguard and attack all their units. When you swing with their Vanguard and you restand their Vanguard, okay, so if it's rested, you restand it, you swing with it, you are going to drive check off your deck, not your opponent's deck. And so you're basically going to gain, you're going to get +1 because your opponent's going to be on a grade 3, it's got twin drive. So you're going to get +1, you're going to board wipe with this, okay? So I've got it at 1, and it's definitely a board wipe that requires no counterblast. It definitely has a place in this deck. I would not run one. Okay. I currently have 2 of him in the deck. The reason I'm very much considering taking this out is I no longer have Enbai in the deck. Enbai works really, really well with this card because your opponent is eventually going to most likely check damage, trigger, and then Enbai, after you're done doing this and you go to your regular battle attacks, it's going to reset your opponent's Vanguard to 11 before you go into battle. So I currently don't have Enbai in here, so I have a really hard time justifying keeping that in here. So taking that out, putting in a 4th Otago Lord, just so that it's more than memes, it's actually like legit in case this doesn't happen and you want to do this twice. I've had games like that in the past. We'll get to this in a minute. We might want to run 2 of these depending on if we were to replace this. And then we've got the other version of Mugen Lord, which dominates 2 of your opponent's strides, not guardians. And yeah, it's kind of cool. I mean, they're 15s. You dominate them, you attack, they're going to go back to their G zone. They don't get any extra bonus. It is a counterblast 1. I really don't like that. I'd almost rather run 1 more of him, which is kind of nuts, to be honest. But this is one option that you could consider there. So this probably go in. And then, you know, we could possibly run another one of these. So what am I thinking about? What am I thinking about? What I'm thinking about is Uzitachi. So Uzitachi. So this was there was a group of us on the Facebook page that really liked this combo. So the way he works is Generation Break 1, retire this unit when dominated unit's attack hits during your turn. You may pay the cost, which is to retire this. If you do, your opponent chooses a card from his or her hand and discards it. If you got 2, 3, 4, whatever, even just 1, if you have some of these on the table, you do this, your opponent's at 6 in hand, you play this, you have 3 of these, your opponent's going to be 3 at hand before you even do anything. And that's not even including if you did Fuki, if you did Bakuren, things like that. This literally is just, your opponent's going to discard a card from hand. So this is definitely an option. You could do this. And I know before we got Rene, this was kind of one of the things that we really looked at. We're like, oh, okay, well, run a few Makuro. You can run a little small army of Uzitachi and go from there. So, yeah. So it's an option. It's an option. Another option is running more Guardians, just because Nubatama Guardians are like the best. I'm just kidding, they're not. So running a 4th of this. We could, things like Abaditashi, so when this unit is placed on G, if the number of cards in your opponent's hand is 6 or less. If your opponent's hand is like 2, this is still going to get an added bonus, which honestly, with a hand attrition deck, can be sometimes better than something like this. So this card is basically punishing your opponent for having too many cards. Number of his hand is 3 or more. So this is or more. It's not or less. So Abaditashi, yeah, you might want to think about things like this. So let me see if I can find the other one, the trial deck version. I was looking for it before I started filming, and if this was even film, I have no reel. Let me see if I can find one of those, because I think that may actually be better in the end, or potentially, it's definitely up for as an option. So I know the thing has to be in here. And if we're going to run the Goku, we better be running one that's hot stamped. This hot stamp swing games. Let's see here. Yeah, here we go. These Guardians look so similar. One's foiled and one's not, so that helps, right? Okay, so yeah, if you're gonna run that, definitely get the foil one. I'm sure it's worth like a whole buck. Yeah. So yeah, so Abadutashi 2.0. So one place, G, if the number of cards in your hand is less than or equal to your opponent's, this gets 5. So this checks your hand. Okay, so I'm not really too much of a fan, but you know, run this. Definitely can run that. It's going to be a 20K, so 20 for 20 just to get more GB online. It's not a bad swap. So yeah. Yeah. So I'd love to hear what you guys are doing out there. You know, there's a lot of ways for us to go about this. You know, we got our champ out there who got in top 8 at BSFO, North America Premium with Hanzo. Pretty awesome. I do like that. My playstyle, no, not at all. And I love Nubatama because we have so many options. So you have Hanzo, you've got Jamyocongo, definitely more my playstyle. We have Shiranui. Elements of Shiranui are definitely my playstyle as well, especially with things like Rene, Kokoshigarasu. Definitely like those lines of play. Storm, if you've got Tom and Jerry, if you happen to be in the JP meta, it's pretty interesting. I do like that. Others, I mean, there are other kind of hybrid things, you know, running Kuchikir Congo, slowing your deck down a little bit, becoming more like maybe tier 3 to tier 2. This definitely is tier 2 deck because, you know, you've got your loops. And so there's that. Some argue it's tier 3. No, I'd actually argue this is tier 2. This can keep up with some decks that can definitely be a dark horse against tier 1 and the rest of tier 2. So, you know, it's a matter of just play testing it. I found this card to be pretty lackluster. Again, maybe I just wasn't getting it at the right time, but definitely setting up for a finishing blow. It's what it always was used for, and that's why I only run it at 3. You can definitely damage deny this deck. You've got a grade 2 that's an 8K. You've got a grade 1 that's a 7. And yeah. And even this is a 12, whereas if you're running up against 4s or against some of the, you know, if people start playing D era Vanguards, those are all 13s. So you could technically do that too, but you're probably not going to want to. But there are a few cards here that allow you to damage deny if you need to, or you can just go really aggressive. So yeah, this is the deck. These are the pieces. Just wanted to let you know how to play it and why the cards are chosen the way they are. Again, not really going to go over ratios. That's something that, you know, we each have differently. Other than I will tell you, I'll just tell you. So if you want to take notes, I do have 4 of this, 3 Kirigiri, 4 Bakuren, 4 Kamojigusa. Some may argue that's too much. I disagree. 4 Fuki, 3 of her because she's a finisher, 3 Tribash because it's somewhat situational. Let's see here. You've 4 Katara Getsunis. You know my trigger lineup. I went over it before. 1 Gilgal, 2 Giacomesa, 1 Makuro, 1 Ganakurakan. Can I even say this right? Gorakan. Ganakurakan's over here. Gorakan. 1 of Drachma, 3 of this, probably go up on that. Currently, I have the 2 of this, which are definitely coming out. 2, 1, 1, 1, and yeah. So I hope you guys are having a great week. Off to a great week starting up. Probably a lot of us are probably out there working, right? I got back to it this week. I was away for a little bit, but it was good to get back to work. And it is, gosh, over 30 minutes. I hope you guys had fun with the video. If you have any questions, leave comments in the comment section below. Feel free to follow. I do enjoy bringing content to y'all. Nubatama and Link Joker are definitely my mains. I do have other premium that I play. I really enjoy Gear Chronicle V, and for D, I'm focused mostly on the Link Joker-esque Orphist ride lineup. So expect more of that. I'm already looking forward to DBTO2, thinking about my tweaks, and hopefully we get something that I can tweak from Dragon Empire as well. Until next time, stay safe. Peace.